She's 6, alone, and hungry? The officer barked. I blinked. My own sister had made the call, then left a handwritten note on my counter after picking my son up herself. And those staged photos she handed the court? She was in the mirror's reflection, holding the phone. My parents backed her lies, my job, my custody, my child, all in jeopardy because they wanted to punish me for working. But I had something they didn't, a binder, and every receipt, timestamp, and pickup log for the last 2 years. And when I showed the judge what they missed, he called me back to the stand. My name is Julia Bennett, and I'm 45 years old. I work double shifts at Memorial Hospital while raising my 6-year-old son, Danny. My morning routine starts at 4:45 a.m., packing his lunch, trading my sneakers for hospital clogs, and making sure his favorite dinosaur Rex is tucked beside him before I leave. Our small apartment carries the sharp scent of lemon cleaner mixed with last night's grilled cheese. My parents, Robert and Ellen, never accepted my divorce, constantly questioning my long hours. My sister Sarah watches every purchase I make, her comments about my career pride dripping with judgment. But they don't know about my hidden strength, the slim black binder on my bookshelf filled with meticulous records of everything. Work schedules, daycare sign-ins, receipts, all carefully dated and filed. Something's shifting in our family dynamic. I can feel it like an approaching storm. But let me start from the beginning. I trudged out of Memorial Hospital just as dusk was settling in, my legs heavy from a 12-hour shift. You know how it is when you're bone-tired. Even the elevator music in our apartment building seemed to drag slower than usual. But something felt off the moment I stepped onto my floor. 2 people were standing at my door, and neither was the familiar shape of Mrs. Rodriguez from next door who sometimes brought us tamales. My steps faltered when I spotted their badges, Child Protective Services. My stomach dropped, but 15 years of nursing had taught me how to keep my face neutral when bad news walked in. Ms. Bennett? The younger officer, a woman with close-cropped hair, stepped forward. I'm Officer Chen, and this is Officer Martinez. We're here following up on a report. I unlocked my door with steady hands, though my heart was racing. Please, come in. The words came out calm, professional. My hospital voice. We received an anonymous tip, Officer Martinez said, his salt and pepper hair catching the last light through our living room window. The caller expressed concern that your son is being left alone for extended periods, sometimes without food. My fingers twitched against my scrub pocket. That's absolutely false. I gestured to the living room, where Danny's after-school snack plate sat drying in the rack. A yellow sticky note on the counter held Sarah's handwriting. Picked up D at 3:30. His latest art project from daycare, a tissue paper butterfly, spread its wings on the coffee table. May we look around? Officer Chen asked, already pulling out her phone to take photos. Of course. I led them through our small apartment, answering their questions with the precise timing I'd learned from charting patient care. I work from 7 to 7. Danny's at Little Sprouts daycare from 6:30 a.m. until 3:30. My sister Sarah or my parents pick him up. They all have keys and take turns depending on their schedules. Officer Martinez nodded, jotting notes. I caught the gentle concern in his eyes, the kind I'd seen in older nurses when young mothers came to the ER alone. Danny's room was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Rex, his green dinosaur, guarded his pillow. I'd laid out tomorrow's pajamas on his reading chair, and his lunchbox waited on his desk, already packed with a sandwich and apple slices. Everything appears to be in order, Officer Chen said, lowering her phone after taking the last photos. However, we're still required to file a report about the complaint. That word, report, made my throat close up. I knew how these things worked, how they could spiral. One report could trigger reviews by the nursing board, custody evaluations, endless scrutiny. We'll be in touch if we need any additional information, Officer Martinez added, his tone softening slightly. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Bennett. I walked them to the door, my scrubs suddenly feeling too thin in the building's chilly hallway. The deadbolt's click echoed in the empty apartment. I stood there, staring through the peephole at the officers' retreating backs, and that's when it hit me, hard and cold as winter rain. Only 3 people had keys to my apartment. Only 3 people knew my exact work schedule. Only 3 people would know how to make this hurt the most. My own family had called CPS on me. I pressed my forehead against the door, the metal cool against my skin. The same door my sister had walked through just hours ago to pick up my son. The same door my parents had a key to, just in case. The same door I'd always left open to them, believing family meant safety. You know what's worse than a sleepless night? The morning after, when reality hits you all over again with your first sip of coffee. That bitter taste matched my mood perfectly as I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone like it might bite me. The envelope icon sat there, blinking with official county letterhead. My hands shook a little as I opened it. Funny how a few kilobytes of data can weigh more than all the medical supplies I lift in a day. Notice of hearing, the letter began. 2 Fridays from now, 9:00 a.m. sharp. Family Court, Division B. Just like that, my vague dread had a deadline, complete with a courtroom number and a judge's name. You ever try to silence an alarm clock that's inside your head? That's what that date became. A constant tick, tick, tick I couldn't mute. I checked my phone's calendar 3 times before leaving for work, as if the date might magically disappear if I caught it off guard. The hospital was its usual controlled chaos when I arrived. 06:57, my time card read, always early, always prepared. That's me. The unit. Whiteboard gleamed with fresh dry erase marks. My name next to rooms 214 through 212. 8 patients, 8 stories, 8 distractions that should have kept my mind off courtroom benches and stenographers' keyboards. Between checking vital signs and hanging antibiotics, I pulled out my phone. Calling my parents felt like swallowing medicine. Necessary, but unpleasant. The phone rang 4 times before my mother answered. Hello? Her voice had that false brightness she used when she already knew why I was calling. Mom, I need someone to watch Danny next Friday morning. I paused, the words sticking in my throat. There's a hearing I have to attend. Oh, Julia. She sighed, and I could picture her shaking her head. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe CPS knows what they're doing. In the background, I heard my sister Sarah's distinctive laugh. That same laugh she'd had since we were kids sharing a bedroom. Only now it cut like glass. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. I see, I managed to say, then hung up before the tears could start. Standing in the medroom, I took 3 deep breaths, just like I taught anxious patients before procedures. During my lunch break, I printed the hearing notice on the unit's printer. The paper felt too official, too final. I slid it into that slim binder I kept at home, the one with all our records. Back in my apartment that evening, I marked the date in red on our kitchen calendar, Friday, 9:04 a.m. The bright ink looked like a warning sign. Between med passes and discharge summaries, I caught myself rehearsing answers to imaginary questions. No, Your Honor, I've never left him alone. Yes, Your Honor, I can provide documentation of childcare. No, Your Honor, I don't understand why my family would do this. Have you ever noticed how time moves differently when you're dreading something? That second Friday hung over every moment like a storm cloud. It colored every routine task, checking IVs, updating charts, even eating lunch at the nurse's station. Each time I turned a corner in the hospital halls, that date seemed to be waiting for me. The drive home that evening felt longer than usual. When I finally reached our apartment building, Mrs. Rodriguez from 4B was just coming out. She looked at me, then at my door, then back at me, that slow, expectant stare people give when they're hoping to witness something scandalous. My cheeks burned as I fumbled with my keys, wondering what rumors had already started circulating through the building's thin walls. The next morning's mail brought the usual stack of junk. Grocery flyers, credit card offers, and a dentist reminder. But tucked between them was a folded piece of paper, cream-colored stationery I recognized from Sarah's desk. My stomach clenched as I unfolded it. There, in her swooping handwriting, "Children need mothers at home." You know that feeling when someone punches you in the gut? This was worse. This was my own sister throwing stones from her glass house, where she worked from home selling essential oils while her husband's salary paid the bills. I crumpled the note and tossed it in my bag, evidence for the binder, once I calmed down enough to flatten it out. The courtyard felt different as I crossed it, like walking through invisible cobwebs. Mrs. Peterson and her friend huddled by the bird feeder stopped talking when they saw me, but I caught the tail end. Unfit. Mrs. Peterson's head tilted in that way people do when they're trying to show sympathy while serving judgment. "Julia, dear, if you ever need to talk," the words dripped with fake concern that made my skin crawl. The hospital wasn't any better. I caught the sideways glances in the break room, saw the whispers stop when I walked in. Apparently, my parents had stopped by the pharmacy yesterday to pick up Dad's blood pressure medication. They'd mentioned their concerns to the pharmacist, who just happened to be dating one of our charge nurses. Remember when you were a kid and played that game where the floor was lava? That's how it felt moving through my shift. Every step careful, every space potentially dangerous. The isolation tightened around me like those blood pressure cuffs I wrapped around arms all day. Just before lunch, Carol, our nurse manager, called me into her office. She perched behind her desk with that careful, neutral expression administrators practice in mirrors. "Julia, we need to discuss maintaining professionalism," she began, shuffling papers that probably had nothing on them, "and ensure stability in patient care." My throat went dry. "Has there been a complaint about my work?" "No specific complaints, no." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just concerns raised. I can't discuss who spoke to whom, of course." "Of course not. That would be too straightforward, too fair." I nodded, promised continued excellence, and escaped to the med room where I could grip the counter and breathe until the shaking stopped. After my shift, I attacked our apartment like dirt was a personal enemy. Baseboards got wiped down, windows cleaned, every surface sanitized. I lined up meal prep containers in the fridge like colorful soldiers, a week's worth of balanced lunches and dinners. The kitchen table became command central, covered with neat stacks of papers, daycare sign-in sheets, pediatrician visit summaries, immunization records. I called Danny's daycare, probably sounding slightly manic as I confirmed every pickup time for the past 3 months. Lisa, the director, didn't ask questions. Bless her. She just printed everything out and had it ready when I stopped by. By midnight, I stood at the window, watching night press against the glass, while shame burned in my cheeks. The kitchen clock's hands slid past 12, and I found myself texting a thank you into the void. For what, I wasn't sure. Maybe just for getting through another day. My phone lit up immediately. Linda's name appeared on the screen. When Linda texted Corner Cafe 5 a.m., I didn't hesitate. I'd worked enough pre-dawn shifts with her to know she didn't waste time or words. The diner sat quiet at that hour, just delivery trucks rumbling past and the hiss of the coffee maker keeping rhythm. You ever notice how diners smell exactly the same at dawn? Coffee and butter with that hint of maple syrup that seems baked into the walls. Linda already had a booth, 2 mugs steaming on the scratched formica. "Brought your binder?" She nodded at my bag. Straight to business. That's Linda. I spread everything out while she stirred cream into her coffee. "They're using my work schedule against me," I said, hearing the crack in my voice, making it sound like I'm never home. Linda's spoon clinked against porcelain. "Let me tell you something I've never shared with the unit." She pushed her coffee aside. 10 years ago, my brother and his wife tried the same play. Different details, same game. They wanted my house, claimed I was too unstable to manage the mortgage after Tom died. My hands froze on the papers. Linda had never mentioned a brother. You know what their evidence was? My grieving. Taking extra shifts to keep busy. She tapped the binder. But I had records. Every payment, every repair, every bill. The judge saw right through them. She leaned forward. Here's what I learned. Lead with records, not outrage. Emotion makes you look defensive. Documentation makes you look prepared. I pulled out my phone, opened my work calendar. I've got all my shifts logged. Better. She grabbed a stack of sticky notes from her purse. Print your time clock logs, get daycare payment receipts, medical checkups, build it like a patient chart, chronological, with everything cross-referenced. For the next hour, we transformed my scattered proof into a battle plan. Linda grabbed napkins to sketch out a timeline. Flag the gaps, she said, marking spots where coverage looked thin. Explain them before they can question them. I can testify, she added, finishing her cold coffee. I've worked enough shifts with you to verify your schedule reliability. Plus, I've seen how you handle your parenting routine during breaks, calls to check homework, coordinating appointments. Back home, I turned my apartment into a war room. The kitchen table disappeared under spreadsheets while I practiced my hearing script. Dates first, sources second, interpretations last. Just like giving report at shift change. Clinical, factual, clear. You know those moments when fear turns into focus? When your hands stop shaking and start moving with purpose? That's what Linda gave me, a blueprint for fighting back. I coiled charger cables, packed backup batteries, called Sarah from pediatrics, who agreed to cover childcare during the hearing, her schedule perfectly documented in our shift trade log. Laid out my outfit, navy blazer, pressed slacks, hospital ID badge, professional, like a credentialing interview. The binder grew thicker. I printed a cover sheet. Timeline of care, in clean black letters. Inside, every document told its part. Time clock stamps proving punctual shifts, daycare sign-in sheets showing consistent pickups, pediatric records confirming regular checkups. Linda's words echoed as I rehearsed my presentation. Lead with records. Check sources, review dates, cross-reference everything. The calendar squares counted down to the hearing date, each one smaller than the last. Night crept in while I stood at my desk, hand resting on the binder's spine. Everything in order, everything documented. Everything. A knock at the door cut through my thoughts. The knock jolted me like a code blue alarm. Through the peephole, I saw a courier shifting from foot to foot, envelope in hand. My fingers trembled as I signed his clipboard. You know, that feeling when your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up? Inside the envelope, glossy photos spilled across my kitchen table like playing cards in a losing hand. Each one had a date stamp burned into the corner, neat and precise. My apartment, but not my apartment. Not really. There was my kitchen floor, decorated with Cheerios ground into the tile like tiny fossils. My laundry room transformed into a winter wonderland of sheets and towels. A chair lying on its side next to my stove. A pan sitting cold and accusatory nearby. Every shot perfectly framed to tell a story of neglect. Have you ever felt your world tilt sideways while standing perfectly still? That's what those photos did to me. I sank into a chair, Linda's voice echoing in my head. Lead with records, not outrage. But my hands shook as I slid the photos into my binder's back pocket. Morning arrived, with that gray courthouse light that makes everything look like an old TV show. My shoes clicked against marble floors that had seen thousands of desperate people before me. The sound bounced off walls that probably had enough stories to fill a library. The courtroom smelled like furniture polish and anxiety. 2 Child Protective Services workers sat at their table, faces professionally blank as they reviewed papers. My sister swept in, wearing a foulard blazer I recognized from Christmas dinner, parents trailing behind her like backup singers. They settled into the front row, all coordinated concern and practiced posture. Matter of Bennett Care Review, the clerk announced, and suddenly I was standing at the podium, my binder clutched against my chest like armor. My sister took the stand first. You should have seen her performance. Oscar-worthy, I'd say, if I wasn't the villain in her story. I couldn't stay silent anymore, she said, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. The conditions, the squalor, Mom and Dad nodded from their seats, a synchronized dance of parental disappointment. The judge watched them over his reading glasses, pen tapping against his notepad. "I have documentation," my sister continued, and my stomach dropped as her attorney approached with those damned photos. Each one slid across the judge's desk like a knife. You ever been on one of those elevator rides where it stops too fast and your insides don't catch up right away? That's how I felt watching the judge examine those pictures. My carefully organized binder, with its tabs and timestamps and testimonials, suddenly felt flimsy against this glossy evidence. "Your Honor," my sister's voice dripped concern, "these photos were taken over several visits. The patterns of neglect are clear." The judge studied each photo, his expression unreadable. "The court will admit these as evidence," he said finally. "Given the new material presented, we'll continue tomorrow morning at 9 to allow for rebuttal preparation." The hallway outside felt like one of those dreams where everyone's staring but you can't find the exit. The clock above security ticked so loud it seemed to echo off the marble. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound like a countdown to something I couldn't stop. Linda guided me to a bench tucked away from the main traffic. The air there carried that distinct courthouse smell. Old varnish mixed with printer toner and stale coffee. I hugged my binder close, its edges digging into my ribs. "Your sister's quite the photographer," Linda muttered, her tone acid-sharp, very artistic with her composition. I couldn't even smile at her attempt at humor. The photos kept flashing, through my mind like a slideshow of failure. My home, my life, my parenting, all reduced to carefully staged scenes of chaos. Linda pressed her shoulder against mine, solid as a wall. "We've got 12 hours, she said quietly. "Let's look at those photos again. Really look at them." Linda and I turned my kitchen into something between a detective's office and a military command center around 4 that afternoon. You know those crime shows where they've got photos and string all over the walls? We weren't quite that dramatic, but we spread everything across my kitchen table, under the bright circle of my pendant lamp. "Okay," Linda said, pulling out her reading glasses. "Let's build this timeline like a med chart. Every entry needs to match reality." I nodded, throat tight. The familiar routine of documentation steadied my hands as I laid out my hospital time clock records. There I was, punching in at 06:57 every morning, like clockwork. Punching out at 19:42, give or take a minute for shift report. Linda started marking these times with blue sticky notes. "Now the daycare logs," she prompted, tapping the table. I pulled out the folder of pickup receipts. Each one showed 17:35 with my signature and the staff initials. Some days it was Sarah who signed me out, others it was Maria. Real people, real times, real proof I was where I should be. "And the pediatrician visits?" Linda asked, uncapping a green pen. "Those went down next. Regular checkups at 10:20 on my days off, documented in Dr. Chen's precise handwriting. Vaccinations, height-weight checks, developmental milestones. All normal, all scheduled, all verified." "Now," Linda said, pulling on latex gloves like she was prepping for a sterile procedure, "let's dissect these photos." I downloaded a magnifier app during lunch break, and we hunched over my phone, examining each image corner by corner. The first photo showed spilled cereal, time-stamped 14:30 on a Tuesday. Except according to my records, I was in the middle of passing meds in room 412 at that exact moment. "Look at the shadows," Linda pointed out. "The sun's coming from the wrong direction for 2:30. We moved to the laundry room photo, stamped 16:15 on a Thursday. That day, I'd been giving report to the night shift nurse while my son was at his after-school program. The picture showed sheets scattered everywhere. Sheets I recognized from my linen closet, but arranged like some kind of abstract art installation. Then we hit pay dirt. "Hold up," I said, zooming in on the kitchen photo. "Look at my refrigerator display." The digital clock on my fridge showed 3:12, but the photo's timestamp claimed 7:45. Linda's eyes lit up, like we'd just caught a patient trying to hide their candy stash. "Got you," she whispered, slapping a red sticky note on that photo. The metadata doesn't match reality. I sat back, rubbing my eyes. Will it be enough? What if the judge cares more about the timestamps than the actual evidence? Linda checked her watch. We've got until 9 tomorrow to make him care about both. I started setting alarms on my phone like I was planning a complex surgery schedule. 05:30 wake up, 06:20 daycare drop-off, 07:10 parking meter. Each beep felt like another sandbag in the wall we were building against my sister's flood of lies. By midnight, my dining room looked like a cross between a legal office and a nursing station. Every photo had its own analysis sheet. Every timeline inconsistency was highlighted and cross-referenced. I packed it all carefully into my work tote, the same one that usually carried spare scrubs and protein bars. Linda left around 1, squeezing my shoulder on her way out. Get some sleep, she ordered, using her charge nurse voice. You need to be sharp tomorrow. I tried to rest on the couch, not wanting to mess up my court outfit laid out in the bedroom. The blinds clicked against the window with each gust of wind, a steady rhythm like a hospital monitor. Lying there, I found myself doing what I often did during tough shifts, silently willing the evidence to speak for itself, hoping that truth could still outweigh theater. I woke before my alarm, my mouth tasting like old coffee and anxiety. The kitchen was still dark, but my mind was racing faster than the sunrise. You know those moments when an idea hits you so hard you can't believe you missed it earlier? That's what happened as I stood there, staring at my reflection in the microwave door. Reflections. Every glossy surface in my apartment was like a mirror, wasn't it? I yanked out the stack of my sister's photos and spread them across the counter. My hands were shaking like they do during a difficult IV start, but I forced myself to slow down. Methodical, like checking meds. One photo at a time. The laundry room shot first. There was a full-length mirror on the back of the door. I fired up the magnifier app, zooming in until the pixels got fuzzy. Something was there, a shape that could be... Mommy? My son's voice startled me. He stood in his dinosaur pajamas, Rex tucked under one arm. Why are you looking at pictures? I set my phone down and pulled him close. Just doing some detective work, sweetie. Did you have good dreams? I dreamed about butterflies, he said, climbing onto a kitchen chair. Can we have a butterfly garden? My throat tightened. Even with everything happening, he still saw beauty in the world. You know what? As soon as this is all over, we'll plant flowers in the backyard. All the colors butterflies love. He beamed at me, and I felt that familiar surge of protective strength. Nobody was taking this from us. Not my sister, not anyone. After dropping him at daycare, I rehearsed my evidence sequence during the drive downtown. Start with the basics, my time clock logs showing I was at work. Layer in the daycare pickup receipts. Then hit them with the digital clock discrepancies. And finally, if I found anything in those reflections. The courthouse looked colder in the morning light. Inside the courtroom, I watched the Child Protective Services representative stand, straightening her blazer. Your Honor, while our initial home inspection revealed no immediate safety concerns, she said, department policy required us to file a report based on the nature of the allegation. The judge nodded, making a note. Something in the room shifted, like when a patient's vital signs start trending in the right direction. Maybe, just maybe, facts still mattered here. Then I saw my sister's smirk. She sat there with our parents, those photos arranged in front of her like surgical instruments before an operation, each one carefully positioned to cut away at my credibility. My stomach clenched as I remembered every staged mess, every manufactured moment of neglect. We'll hear the respondent's rebuttal after lunch, the judge announced, tapping his gavel. Court is in recess until 1 o'clock. The hallway outside felt too bright, too exposed. I dropped onto a wooden bench, the noon sun streaming through tall windows and warming my face. But inside, I felt cold. The kind of cold you get when you realize how much energy you've spent fighting and how much more you might need. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I pulled up the magnifier app. What was I even looking for? Maybe I was grabbing at shadows, seeing patterns that weren't there. just like they said I would. Just like... A warm hand squeezed my shoulder. "Linda, you look like you need this," she said, holding out a protein bar, the same kind we kept stashed at the nurse's station for long shifts. "And maybe a fresh set of eyes on those photos?" I looked up at her, at the determination in her face, and felt my own spine straighten. Sometimes the smallest gestures of support can rebuild your whole world. Have you ever noticed how time moves differently when you're waiting for something big? That minute hand on the courthouse wall clock might as well have been dragging through molasses. I kept shuffling through the photos, my fingers leaving prints on the glossy surface, while Linda reviewed her notes beside me. The top photo showed our living room. The one my sister had claimed showed typical conditions. I'd seen it 20 times already, but something made me pause. Maybe it was the angle of the light, or just that my eyes were tired enough to see things differently. There, in the background, the gilt-edged mirror above the sideboard that Mom had given me when I first moved in. I'd always hated how ornate it was, but now it might save everything. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and opened the magnifier app one more time. The reflection in that mirror was partial, distorted by the angle, but clear enough. A face I knew as well as my own. A phone case with that distinctive purple glitter pattern. And those fingernails. The same shade of coral pink my sister had been wearing when she testified this. "Morning." "Linda," I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Look at this." She leaned in close, squinting at my phone screen. Her eyes widened. She took the pictures herself. Every single one of them. The realization hit me like a shot of adrenaline. So much for anonymous concern. I grabbed my legal pad and wrote it down fast. Mirror shows sister W. Phone. Simple, clear, undeniable. Just like we document critical findings at the A hospital. I stuck a bright yellow flag on the photo's corner, the kind I use to mark important lab results in patient charts. The fear that had been choking me all morning transformed into something else, something harder, cleaner. Like when a critical patient finally stabilizes and you know exactly what needs to happen next. My binder sat open to our timeline, each entry neat and verified. Time clock punches, daycare logs, everything that proved where I really was when these photos were staged. Now I had the perfect finish, proof of who was really behind the camera. The bailiff's voice cut through the hallway chatter. "All rise!" The courtroom filled with that rustling sound of people standing, like waves coming in at dawn. I caught a glimpse of my parents sliding into their seats, eyes fixed firmly on their hands. They knew. They had to have known what she was doing. The judge settled into his chair, arranged his papers, and looked out at us. "We'll continue with the respondent's rebuttal," he said. "Ms. Bennett?" I stood, my spine straight, my nurse's training taking over. "Start with the foundation. Build your case. End with the revelation, the same way we present difficult cases during rounds." The clerk approached with the Bible. "Raise your right hand," she said. I lifted my arm toward those harsh fluorescent lights, feeling their heat on my skin. The weight of everything, my career, my son, our future, balanced on what would happen next. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't afraid. The truth was right there in the mirror. All I had to do was show them where to look. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do." You know that moment in the hospital when all your preparation finally pays off? When every detail you've documented suddenly matters? That's exactly how it felt as I took my seat in the witness box. "Ms. Bennett," the judge said, "please walk us through your evidence." I opened my binder to the first tab. "Your Honor, I'd like to start with my work schedule." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Every morning for the past 3 years, I've clocked in between 6:45 and 7:00 a.m. Here are my time records, verified by HR." The judge nodded, examining the printouts. I watched his eyes track across the columns of dates and times. On the days these photos were allegedly taken, I continued, I was at work. Here's my badge swipe data showing I entered the pediatric unit at 6:57 a.m. I handed over another page. And here are the daycare records showing my son was dropped off at 6:20 a.m. and picked up at 5:35 p.m. The Child Protective Services representative leaned forward. Your Honor, I should note that during our home visit, we found the apartment well maintained. There were no immediate safety concerns. Remember those moments when you're starting an IV and you feel the catheter slip perfectly into place? That's how it felt, hearing those words. I took a deep breath and pulled out the photos. If I may, Your Honor, these pictures show something important beyond their content. I held up the first image. The timestamp claims this was taken at 7:45 a.m. on March 15th, but look at the digital display on my refrigerator in the background. The judge adjusted his glasses. What am I looking for, Ms. Bennett? The clock reads 3:12, Your Honor. And that's just the beginning. My hands were steady now as I reached for the final photo. This is the most important piece. I walked it to the bench myself. The glossy paper felt warm under my fingers as I pointed to the gilt-edged mirror. In the reflection, Your Honor, you can see the person taking the picture. The courtroom went so quiet, I could hear the ventilation system humming. Explain what I'm seeing, the judge said. That's my sister's face in profile. The purple glitter phone case she's holding, she's had it since Christmas, and her coral pink nail polish. I glanced at her hands, gripping the X table across the room. The same color she's wearing today. The judge studied the photo for a long moment. Bailiff, please collect the original digital files from counsel. He looked up. Ms. Linda Matthews? Linda approached the stand as I returned to my seat. My legs felt like rubber, but my mind was clear. Everything was documented. Everything was time-stamped. Everything was true. I've worked with Julia for 6 years, Linda began. Same unit, often the same shifts. I've seen her routine with her son hundreds of times. Please elaborate, the judge said. She packs his lunch the night before, sets out his clothes. Even when we work until midnight, she's there at daycare pickup the next afternoon like clockwork. Linda's voice carried the weight of experience. In pediatrics, we notice these things. It matters how parents manage care. I watched my sister's face as Linda testified. The smirk was gone, replaced by something tighter, more worried. My parents kept their eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles, as if answers might be written there. The court will recess briefly to review the Child Protective Services report and examine the photo metadata, the judge announced. Please remain in the building. The bailiff opened the side door, and the judge disappeared behind it. My hands were shaking now that adrenaline was mixing with relief. I'd done everything I could. Every record was clear. Every timestamp told the truth. Linda squeezed my shoulder as we waited. The hallway clock ticked in perfect rhythm with my pulse, counting down the moments until the judge would return with his findings. The door opened again. The bailiff called us back in. The judge settled into his chair, arranging a stack of papers before him. The moment stretched like an elastic about to snap. All rise, the bailiff announced. The judge cleared his throat, and the sound rippled through the courtroom like a stone dropped in still water. I pressed my palms flat against my thighs to keep them steady. This court has reviewed the evidence thoroughly, he began, his tone carrying the weight of authority I'd heard from senior physicians making critical calls. The timeline presented by Ms. Bennett shows consistent, documented patterns of responsible childcare. Her work schedule records align precisely with daycare drop-off and pickup times. There are no gaps in supervision. You know that moment when you finally breathe after holding your breath too long? That's how it felt hearing those words. But I kept my face neutral. Years of delivering difficult news to patients' families had taught me that much. Furthermore, he continued, the Child Protective Services inspection report indicates a well-maintained home environment with no safety concerns. The investigating officers noted appropriate food supplies, clean living spaces, and proper sleeping arrangements. I caught Linda's slight nod from the corner of my eye. We'd both seen enough documentation in our careers to know when the tide was turning. Most significantly, the photographic evidence submitted to support these allegations contains troubling inconsistencies. He lifted the photo with the mirror reflection. This image clearly shows the person taking the photograph was Ms. Bennett's sister, the same person who claimed to have discovered these conditions independently. The sister's bracelet clinked against the table as she twisted it. I remembered giving her that bracelet last Christmas, back when I still believed family meant protection. Based on these findings, this court dismisses all allegations of neglect against Ms. Bennett. Child Protective Services is directed to close this case immediately. He paused, letting the words settle. However, we're not finished. My parents shifted in their seats. You could almost hear their wooden chair legs scraping against their consciences. The evidence strongly suggests these allegations were maliciously fabricated with the intent to cause professional and personal harm to Ms. Bennett. The potential impact on her nursing career alone is deeply concerning. The emotional trauma inflicted on both mother and child cannot be ignored. The gallery behind us rustled like autumn leaves. I thought about my son at daycare, probably painting butterflies or building with blocks, blissfully unaware of how close we'd come to losing everything. This court is considering sanctions against the parties responsible for this false report. His gaze swept across my family. I will hear brief statements from all parties this afternoon before making that determination. You will all remain available until then. The gavel cracked like summer thunder. We'll reconvene at 2:30 p.m. Dismissed. Linda's hand found my shoulder as we stood. The touch anchored me as the room began to empty, my family filing out without a glance in my direction. Their footsteps echoed against the marble floors, each click a reminder of the distance they'd created. The courthouse atrium welcomed us with streams of sunlight pouring through tall windows. The air carried that distinct public building smell, floor polish and old wood, like every hospital administration office I'd ever visited. I sank onto a bench near a towering ficus tree, its leaves casting gentle shadows on the floor. My fingers traced the edges of my binder, my shield, my sword, my salvation. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to daycare. Regular pickup time today, thank you. Such a normal message for such an extraordinary morning. Linda settled beside me, her scrubs rustling. She'd come straight from her night shift to testify. You did good in there, she said softly. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. The binder sat closed in my lap, its job finally done. Through the atrium's open doors, I could hear the city going about its business, traffic signals changing, people chatting, life continuing as if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. At 2:25, the afternoon session bell echoed through the doorway. I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked back toward the courtroom. The wooden bench that had felt like judgment just hours ago now felt solid beneath me, like the familiar support of a well-worn nurse's station during a long shift. We waited for the judge's return, the air heavy with anticipation. The courtroom air felt different when we filed back in. Heavier, like the atmosphere before a storm breaks. My family sat stiffly in their chairs, probably thinking about their country club memberships and church committee positions. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The judge didn't waste time with preliminaries. After reviewing the evidence and considering the severe nature of these false allegations, this court finds sanctions are not only appropriate, but necessary. He adjusted his glasses, lifting a document. The following orders are effective immediately. My sister's bracelet stopped its nervous dance. My parents' shoulders tensed in perfect unison, the way they used to when I'd come home late as a teenager. First, monetary sanctions. This court fines each party, both parents and sister, $5,000 for filing false reports with Child Protective Services. Additionally, they will reimburse Ms. Bennett's legal fees and related defense costs, currently tallied at $12,000. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. Payment is due within 30 days. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. That would put a dent in their winter cruise plans. Second, all three parties will complete 40 hours of community service with the Family Court Support Services, specifically focusing on ethics training and the impact of false allegations on families and children. Linda's presence behind me felt like a wall of strength. I thought about all those nights in the hospital when she'd shown me how to stand firm while staying professional. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the testimony regarding workplace slander, this court grants the hospital legal counsel's request for complete access to these proceedings. I hadn't even noticed the hospital's attorney slip in, but there she was, elegant in her charcoal suit, requesting copies of everything. My sister's face went pale as printer paper. When we finally spilled into the hallway, the whispers started immediately. I caught fragments floating past. Can you believe they'd do that to their own daughter? And hospital board won't like this. The gossip tide had turned, and for once it wasn't drowning me. The hospital's attorney caught my eye as she passed. The ethics committee will be reviewing this matter thoroughly, she said quietly. We take staff safety very seriously, including emotional safety. I checked my watch. Still time for regular pickup. Strange how normal tasks felt like victories now. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister's friend canceling their weekend plans. Another buzz, the church newsletter committee regretfully requesting my mother step down temporarily. At daycare, my son launched himself into my arms, Rex dangling from one hand. We made butterfly pictures, he announced, holding up a paint-splattered masterpiece. That's beautiful, honey, I said, breathing in his crayon and cookie scent. How about breakfast for dinner tonight? With chocolate chip pancakes? With chocolate chip pancakes. The evening sky painted itself pink and orange as we walked to the car, his small hand warm in mine. I buckled him into his car seat, tucking Rex in beside him. The dinosaur's plastic face seemed to smile knowingly. My phone lit up again as I slid behind the wheel. Linda's message glowed on the screen. Proud of you. You protected what matters. I started typing, thank you for everything, but deleted it. The words felt too small for what she'd done. Instead, I just sat there, letting relief wash over me like the sunset's colors. Looking in the rearview mirror, I watched my son chattering to Rex about his day. No shadows touched his world anymore. That's what mattered. Not the whispers at the country club. Not my sister's social calendar imploding. Not my parents facing their church friends with tarnished halos. Mommy, his voice piped up. Can we put honey on the eye? Pancakes too? Sure can, buddy. I started the car, leaving the courthouse and its consequences behind us. Sure can. That Saturday morning, I woke up before my alarm, something pulling me toward the kitchen window. The backyard was waiting, still damp with dew, ready for new beginnings. I'd been putting off the garden project since moving in, always too busy with shifts or too worried about what the neighbors might whisper. Not anymore. Can we plant the flowers now? My son padded into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, Rex tucked under one arm. Right after breakfast, buddy. I ruffled his hair. Want to help me make a list? We sat at the kitchen table with paper and colored markers, plotting our butterfly sanctuary while munching toast. The garden center receipts would go in my binder. Old habits die hard. But this time, they'd tell a story of growth, not defense. You know, what's funny? The same morning my family was probably opening their first round of social cancellations and payment demands, we were opening seed packets on the back stoop. The court order had hit them where it hurt most, their wallet and their reputation. $5,000 each in fines, plus my legal fees. There went their winter cruise budget. The hospital's ethics investigation was worse, spreading through their social circles like ink in water. I heard they'd stopped going to their usual Sunday brunch spot. Guess it's hard to enjoy Eggs Benedict when the other regulars know you tried to destroy your daughter's life. My son's voice pulled me back to the present. Can Rex help dig? Sure, but he might get dirty. I handed him a small trowel, and we headed out back. The morning air felt different now, lighter somehow. No more looking over my shoulder, no more wondering who might be taking pictures through windows. Just soil under my fingernails and the sound of my kid naming each butterfly we'd attract. "This corner's perfect for milkweed," I said, marking spots with small stakes. "Monarchs love it. And we'll put marigolds along the edge. They're tough little flowers." "Like you, Mommy?" I paused, trowel mid-dig. "Yeah, baby, like us." We worked through the morning, laying out our butterfly welcome mat. Lavender went in. Near the fence, its purple spikes would peek through the slats later, a reminder that beauty doesn't need permission to grow. My son arranged stones in a circle, creating what he called Rex's watching spot. The hospital's investigation was thorough, from what Linda told me. Every whispered comment my parents had spread during their pharmacy visits, every rumor my sister had planted in the break room, all of it documented, all of it traced, back to them. The ethics committee didn't take kindly to staff members using hospital spaces to spread malicious lies. Mrs. Chen from next door poked her head over the fence around noon. Last month, she'd been one of the neighbors averting their eyes. Now she held out a packet of butterfly bush seeds. "These attract the big yellow ones," she said simply, then added, "My mother tried to control my life too. Sometimes family needs to learn the hard way." I took the seeds with soil-stained hands. "Thank you," she nodded, not with pity this time, but with something that felt like respect, and disappeared back into her yard. My son was chasing a monarch that had discovered our work in progress, his laughter bouncing off the fence. I lifted him up for a better view as it danced over the newly planted lavender. "Look, Mommy, it likes our garden." "It sure does." I set him down and watched him arrange Rex carefully on one of the stones, positioning the dinosaur like a tiny guardian of our blooming space. Standing there in the warm afternoon light, dirt on my knees and my son's joy filling the air, I felt the truth settle into place like roots taking hold. You can't fake evidence, you can't manufacture reality, and you sure can't steal a mother's truth when she's documented every step of her love.